Marcus Hayes, Fight Hub TV with the guy you see him, Mr. Stephen Espinoza. Stephen, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
We are here ahead of Canelo Alvarez, Jaime Munguia, fight announced, press conference incipient. Tell us how excited, first off, are you for this showdown of Mexican warriors?
Look, some of my favorite fights in history, all of our favorite fights, most memorable fights have been Mexican against Mexican. I mean, personally, my favorite rivalry, Barrera Morales. Obviously that's a Mexican rivalry within itself. And I think, look, you've got an interesting matchup here. Young, strong kid in Jaime Munguia. You've got, obviously the established champion. But he's got youth and athleticism and strength and, I think hope on his side. So Munguia's got, I think, is a real threat to Canelo.
And when we talk about Jaime Munguia coming off of two impressive performances, the latest in John Ryder, knockout, ninth round, and then probably the fight of the year with Sergey Derevyanchenko before that. Jaime Munguia looks like he's coming on to his own at this point in time. What type of challenge do you think he realistically presents for Alvarez?
I think this is the right time for the Munguia fight, because I think if you looked at Munguia a year ago, 2 years ago, he was a brawler. He was rough. I'm not saying he had no skills, but he was largely a brawler. And I think what you've seen, particularly in the last year, is a lot of progress in Munguia. And I think fighting an experienced guy like Derevyanchenko is a great opportunity for him. Ryder is a tough guy, very different challenge, but also provides some learning experience. So I think the Munguia that we're going to see on May 4th is better positioned than he's been over the last couple of years to take on a challenge like Canelo.
And Munguia presents an offensive challenge that maybe a lot of people say that Canelo just haven't seen recently, with the firepower that the young Munguia presents. Blistering punches, up and down puncher. He's got his own rhythm, and he's got a heck of a gas tank.
Yeah, there are some people, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily one of them, but there are some people that say, look, the key to Bivol beating Canelo was the activity level. And I'm not saying Munguia is Bivol. There are very few fighters who fight what Bivol, do what Bivol does. But if you look at that activity level and say, look, the key to someone who's a counterpuncher or who sort of sets the pace like Canelo is you have to force the pace. Well, Munguia can definitely do that. And that's what he does. Throw a lot of punches, force you into uncomfortable positions. Got good power, good activity level, good conditioning, and we're going to find out what Canelo still has in the tank. After 18 years as a pro.
Doesn't seem like it's been that long, does it? I mean, when you talk about Canelo and you look at him, 18 years in the game, and that's what I wanted to touch on is time after time after time after time, we've seen him kind of pull it out the hat. But what Munguia looks to be a Mexican legend on his own. I was watching an interview of Julio Cesar Chavez, and Julio Cesar Chavez basically said that he didn't think that Munguia was ready yet. What does Munguia have to do you think, to capture those hearts and minds?
Well, you can't underestimate the pressure of a big fight. And, Munguia's been in big fights, but there's something different if you're on Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas with the kind of crowds that Canelo brings out. It is a different level of pressure. It's also a different type. Being in an event like this, it's exhausting. The PR obligations, the shoulder programming obligations, everybody coming to camp. It really is a marathon. You've got to learn how to pace yourself from now until May 4th in terms of what you give people. So I think that's the most different thing about this experience that Munguia hasn't been before. Now, once you get in the ring, obviously there's not a lot of fighters like Canelo. Very sharp counterpuncher, very solid defense, underrated defense, and all the experience in the world. He's seen everything by this point. So he's got a tall task. But, like I said, he's got youth, he's got power, he's got activity level, he's a pressure fighter. There's a lot of things which may say, look, maybe this will be the guy who can give Canelo some problems.
And Stephen, when we talk about Munguia versus Canelo, there were rumors Canelo had left the negotiation table with PBC for a while. Talk to us about, one, was that true? And two, what did you guys do to kind of rope everything together?
Yeah, look, Canelo, it's been a long time since Canelo sort of took his business over. Like, he's been the captain of his ship. He's been maneuvering and navigating his own career for quite a while. I mean, there's no shortage of promoters who are, eager to take credit for what he does. But the reality is, he's been running his career for quite a while. So, at a certain point, if he wasn't seeing what he liked, or he had curiosities about what the opportunities were, it's absolutely, his right to go look around, and that's why when everyone says, look, it was an amicable parting of the ways, clearly it was. If anybody had burned a bridge, then they wouldn't have gotten back together again. So it's sort of like, at a certain point, people jump to these conclusions. They want to, pitch these certain narratives about what happened, going forward. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they're jumping to conclusions and spreading a narrative that isn't true. It's like, PBC's out of money. Canelo doesn't want to deal with them. Blah, blah. No, let's not be so melodramatic about things. It's sort of like, okay, it's called a negotiation. You negotiate with one party, you negotiate with a different party. Sometimes you end up where you started. Sometimes you go for a different opportunity. And so it was a very normal, I think, progression of the business. It just, everybody was, I think, so frantic to sort of put a exclamation point on what happened that no one actually waited to see what really was going to transpire.
And we're just looking at a straight up fight at 168. Any rematch clauses or anything inside of this bout?
No, it's a 168-pound fight, and and a pretty enticing one at that. But no bells and whistles on it. I mean, other than the structure, and I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about the structure. It's not a co-promotion. It's not a joint pay-per-view. It's not. This is a PBC event. PBC will be distributing it, but sort of like Ryan and Tank, DAZN will be able to sell it on their platform. So this is not Mayweather Pacquiao, Mayweather McGregor. It's not a joint pay-per-view. It's not a co-promotion. It is, I think, in recognition of the fact that DAZN has Munguia under contract, through Golden Boy.
And a viable platform at that.
Right. So, they're going to bring their audience and their viewers to the table. They're going to be able to sell the pay-per-view, and people can now see it probably on platforms, certainly not ever before possible. I mean, we're now talking, if you talk 5 years ago, you weren't even talking about DAZN platforms pay-per-view, nor were you talking about Amazon. And now here we are. It'll be the first pay-per-view that you see on both of those big platforms.
And is that something that we can kind of expect going forward when we look at basically what is a co-promotion? Is that something that we can kind of expect?
It depends. Like, look, if it's necessary to make the fight. I mean, I've heard that same narrative. PBC doesn't want to, work with anybody to make things happen. I mean, no sooner did people start spreading that narrative is they did exactly what people said they wouldn't do, and they've been doing it. Whether it's we got a couple examples last year, including Ryan versus Tank. So when it's it's more difficult, it's messier, it's a lot more time consuming. But when the fight necessitates it, obviously PBC will do it.
Does David Benavidez have anything to do with? Is he sort of trailed into this or coupled into this fight, maybe for a potential matchup with him in the future? Is that still something?
I think the door's still open.
Eyeing?
I think the door's still open, and they think the reality is like people want to slam the door shut, and declare they know what's going on, they know what's going to happen. We've just seen, all those people proven wrong again and again, and more recently on this one. So even if, the Benavidez fight doesn't happen now, I'm not ready to close the book. I'm not going to sort of, stamp my feet and pout that we didn't get it here. I mean, sure, I'm like all boxing fans. I'd like to see that before Canelo, exits boxing, but we've got time for that. And I think the door's still open in September. I mean, who knows?
Okay. Moving on to another fight, March 30. Big news coming out of the 154-pound division. Unfortunately, one-time Thurman is once again injured, suffering a biceps injury in sparring, making him having to pull out the fight. Sebastian Fundora, the Tower Inferno, to the rescue. Sebastian Fundora, Tim Tszyu, March 30th, main event. What do you think about this fight?
Look, there's probably some people out there who will say this is perhaps a bigger challenge. It certainly is to Tszyu. It certainly is a different challenge. It's, for all the things that Keith brings to the table, Fundora is a very different fighter. So you're now adjusting on, what are we talking, 10 days, 12 days notice?
Right, 12 days notice.
So, look, but there's no question about Fundora's availability and his preparation. He was obviously on the card, preparing in his own way. And it's a fight that, could have been happening later this year anyway. They're just getting it a little bit early. And, I haven't seen the odds. I was sort of shocked at how big a favorite Tszyu was to start with. I thought from a betting perspective, there was a lot of value there because I didn't see Keith as a 6 or 7 to 1 underdog.
Right, at one point an 8 to 1 underdog.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me, and nothing against Tszyu, but you just can't count out a guy like Thurman as an 8 to 1 or 7 to 1 or 6 to 1 underdog. But here you've got a young guy. He was winning the Mendoza fight, got caught, and it doesn't change all the difficulties that he brings to the table. His height, his activity level, all of it is going to be a big challenge for Tim.
Thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure to subscribe for more videos of your favorite fighters over here on Fight Up TV, and give us a follow online as well at Fight Up TV on Twitter and on Instagram. We appreciate it, guys.